Okay, wait for my go signal. In the
All right.
meantime, maybe Franz has an icebreaker later, but then if people would like to share their school, where they're listening from right now, if you're procrastinating on something while listening to this, let us know what you're procrastinating on. Okay, we're good.
Yes. So hello everyone. Welcome to this very intimate talk, stories not numbers, an introduction to data visualization by Franz. Yay. So Franz is very talented. He's a full stack data scientist and is currently the chief CEO of Ateneo de Manila University's Gold Developer Student Clubs. And he previously has worked as data science intern at Dash Labs, also as a community mentor and fellow at Escolabs, and a data visualization analyst at Tasca. So that's a lot of experience in data. And he's currently in his senior year studying MIS or Management Information Systems at Ateneo. So guys, you'll be learning from someone very experienced today. Yeah, take it away.
Hello, hello. Okay, am I heard? Am I coming across clear?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
All right. Hi, everyone. So, yeah, as Chia said, it would be nice if I could get everyone like a short introduction, like your name, your course, maybe why you're here. Be really nice to like know a little bit more about you guys. And thank you so much, Bianca, for introducing me. I'm actually still a junior. Oh no. But yeah. Hi, I'm really grateful for Develop for inviting me here to share a little bit more about data visualization. This talk is really just about the non-technical aspect of data visualization because when someone wants to start a project like this on Data Viz and you don't really know where to start, sometimes a lot of people jump into the coding stuff like, oh, okay, I have to learn Python, I have to learn everything, I have to learn these really big um, words that I don't really know what they mean. But honestly, Data Viz starts from understanding your data first, right? And a lot of that actually comes into the planning of like the whole process of understanding it. So that's really what I'll be sharing to everyone. Like, so our flow will be first of all, what really is data visualization. We'll be talking about the process. So personally, this is my process for how I handle different data visualization projects. So I want to share this to you guys. So again, this is my process, but I want to share it so that you can use it as a basis for when you start your own projects and create your own process. And then the third part of this will be having a short activity so you guys can really practice or try your hand at starting a data visualization project. Yeah. And then the last part is then what happens next when we're like really visualizing data. Is it just, I made a graph, that's it, I'm done? Is it is that the end of like a data viz project? Yeah. So okay, to start us off, what is data viz? So I want everyone to try and answer this question, maybe through the chat as well. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear data visualization? It could be anything, like just a word, a concept, anything that comes into mind. Thank you, Bianca. Sexy graphs. Okay, interesting. Also, I'm seeing some introductions in the chat. Hello, everyone. Ooh, interactives on news websites. Interesting. Okay, how about the others? What's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear data viz? Or what were you expecting when you went into a data viz talk? Chloe, sexy graphs. New York Times, yes. Representation, all right. Okay, communications and graphics. It's very true. Ooh, Jake said insights. Interesting. All right. So, okay. Math 10 class. Okay. So, when we talk about data viz, um, first of all, we think about data, right? So, this is usually what we're handling, something like an Excel sheet, a CSV. And based on what you guys are saying, we expect something like this for data visualization, right? Like a dashboard as a lot of you said, like sexy graphs and different types of charts. Yeah. But this is basically like, so data viz is simply the graphical representation of information and data, right? The graphs, charts, maps, all that kind of stuff. But I want us to go a little bit further on what data visualization really is. So I'm going to share to you an example that honestly changed my view on data, because I don't know about you guys, but when I started with data science, I was the type of guy that like really hated statistics. So when I went into data science, I was really, really scared because I was like, I hate stat. And I was expecting it to be something fully like that. But this is one of the examples that really changed my perspective on what data science and data visualization really is. So this is a project by Georgia Lupi from New York City, and it's called Friends in Space. So the idea is that this astronaut, her name is Samantha. She was gonna go into space for like 6 months just to like travel a little bit, right? But it's the normal astronaut stuff that you're recording data, taking some observations, all that stuff. But Samantha reached out to Georgia Lupi because she wanted to make a little bit more meaning when she went up into space. So this is the project that they came up with. Instead of just charting their journey, Samantha's journey throughout space by like the coordinates, the speed that they're in, what asteroids they pass, or stuff like that. What they came into, what they decided on to do was that whenever Samantha is above you on the map, when you go into this site, you'll be able to say hi. So if you look at that little button, it's a simple button that just says hi, right? And here you can see that it's tracking her journey, right? This line, but it's more so tracked by those little circles that you see there. So those circles are like a heat map of all of the people that said hi all throughout Samantha's journey. So it's not just the coordinates that you see from Samantha's trip, but you see each and every person that said hi to her all throughout her journey for that 6 months. So comparing that to what we said, that it's just graphs or charts, maybe in the news, that's what data visualization is, right? But then when we look at this example, we can see that we can go much further than just simply translating numbers into graphs. We can share an entire journey in a different way, and sometimes that's not just through numbers. Okay, so another example that I really, really love, so for all my fellow musical theater nerds out there, is this website from Pudding. So this is just one example, but like there's a lot of these types of visualizations in this website, so I highly recommend checking it out. But this is one of my favorites. I'll actually show it to you right now. So do you guys see the website? You guys see it moving? Right? Thank you for letting me know. Okay. So the idea of this website is that every time you scroll, it'll like change and discuss different insights. So each circle is apparently a line from the musical, and you can see who sang it, the line itself. And it's basically a very long essay through all of the lines of it, and then it's showing it to you in different ways. So see, each circle is a set of lines, and then this is like it arranged by singer, and every time you scroll, it's a different way of seeing those lines. So it's a lot different from what we traditionally know of data visualization, because these are just words, right? Or these are like the lyrics of the musical, and here it is shown to us in a different way, as if they're data points in different contexts, and different stories. So this is what I want everyone to picture when we say data visualization, that it's not just numbers, it's not just numbers, it's not just charts or a line graph, all of that stuff. It's really about the stories that you can tell and what else you can find out through data. And again, it doesn't always have to be just from numbers. Okay, going back. Okay, so this is my last example, and this is like a fairly simple website called Common Voice. So unlike the other two, it was like really representing something. right? But here, when you see the data, it's actually um, it's actually shown into different call to actions. So the first is speak. So that means when you click this button, it takes you to like an interface that allows you to record your voice reading something out, right? And then the second point is listen. And when you listen to it, you're going to write down what they're trying to say. So it's something that's very simple as a premise. You speak and you listen. But the overall goal of this website is to actually help people have data for the different types of accents people have, like, you know, how some people pronounce R's differently, that you can say R or ah. But, you know, this is very different to the other two because instead of like actually seeing the data represented in some way, here you see the data as something that's just something you interact with. One is actually giving data through your voice, and then the second is actually you validating that data. So of course they have some graphs here to show a summary of how many have spoken, how many have listened, the hours that people have been donating. But the main point of showing the data is to really have you engage with it, right? So data visualization here isn't just restricted to even showing something, but more on engaging it and contributing to a bigger goal. Yeah. So okay, when that's we discussed like what data visualization is, what it can be, and how we can elevate it. But then how can we really, you know, um, go through go through a process so that we can find or actually really build a project like this, you know, because we start with ideas and sometimes we're just lost from there. So this is my process, the Data Viz process that I always follow. So the first is starting with a problem. So a problem is really just a goal or a question that you want to answer. So if you go back to this speak and listen example from Common Voice, their problem is that a lot of people, or you know, as AI and technology is evolving, when you always know when you talk to, for example, Siri or um I forgot, Cortana, and they don't fully understand you. And a lot of people from especially countries that have weird pronunciation, or not weird, but different pronunciations, they can't really be understood by these technologies because these are usually catered to the English speaking people, which can be a bit unfair. So that's the problem that they had. They wanted to make speech recognition and that type of technology more accessible, and then they answered the question, or they asked like, how can we actually help those people, you know, um, what data do we need from there? So right, if you look at it, you really just need the voices of different people, and then you need to be able to tag those types of data. So the problem again was just how can we help people um, have more access to speech recognition. And then from there, you proceed to data collection. So, which is exactly what they did. That what data do we have currently? And the data that they had was none. But what data do we need? And has anyone done something similar? So, going back to a little bit more research, that this is technically the review of related literature, that this stage really allows you to hone in on what you really need because um, sometimes you can get a little bit too much data and you lose track of your goals because of it, that you actually get trapped by the data that you're working with. So that's why the problem comes first, because it helps you align and really understand what data you need, so you know how to go from there. So okay, the third step is exploring that data that you gathered. So now that we have the different voices of people, what patterns can we find, what insights can we derive from it? So this isn't really visualization yet, it's more about exploring the data, and the technical side of that I won't discuss for this talk, but I just really wanted to highlight that this step is where you maybe work a little bit more on the statistics side of it, cleaning the data, all of that stuff, you know, removing outliers, and then applying different math concepts in order to understand the data that you're holding. So with the speech data that we have been discussing, maybe it's finding that, like, oh, maybe Filipino people and Malaysian people have certain words that they speak the same, and a lot of words that are completely different. So that's just one example that you can compare just from looking at your data. And this is really where you're gonna hone in on your data, right? Once you find those patterns, once you find those insights through the EDA phase, um, you're gonna want to share it. So this is really the last part of the data viz process, because after you've understood your data, you've already answered the questions that you asked. You want to share it to everyone. And the thing with being a data scientist or someone who works with data is not everyone will understand how you got to that answer, right? So when I was talking about speech data, it's not something that I've actually worked on myself yet. So when someone walks up to me and they say, "Oh, did you know that the voices have a mean error," or something like that? It's like a bunch of scary words, technical jargon. Even a lot of people won't really understand what you're saying. So this is where the data visualization really goes into place, because what point are you trying to make? Even if you found out everything about speech recognition, um, what is it that your audience really needs to hear or really needs to see, right? So from this is when you go back to your problem. What was the question that you asked? And then how is the best way that you can answer it? So let's look at a different example, which is here. So this is some data that was taken for when I worked as a data science intern for TheraWe. And for context, TheraWe is a company that helps kids with disabilities and giving them therapy. Yeah. So I want to ask all of you guys, what story do you think this image says, or what is it trying to say? If you look at it, what were your first thoughts? So feel free to send your thoughts and ideas in the chat. I'll give you guys around 3 minutes to just observe the picture and just share any ideas that you have. Yeah. Mhm. Okay. So saying what the family's problems are, uh mainly concerned with their kids finding jobs or getting married, family concerns. All right. So yeah, I really like those ideas, and I'm glad that it came across pretty clear. But the main goal or the main problem that this was addressing was the fact that families were struggling with having access to therapy. So, yes, family concerns, completely valid. Finding jobs, getting married, that's actually something a bit forward that I'm honestly surprised to hear, because this was, talking a little bit more about the current situation. But the fact that you were able to see more into the future is really interesting. But if you guys also see, this is actually casted to an image of a mother, a father, and a child. So they're like hugging, right? And again, this isn't a numbers example. As I said, the goal was about um, parents and parents and their access to therapy for their kids, because a lot of them were really struggling financially or didn't even know what to do, because a lot of the kids that they handle or the therapy worked with were kids that really had development issues, or struggled with even day-to-day life. So let's go back. So the story here is more about showing the different stories also of the parents that we worked with. So the data here was actually just asking, can you tell us a little bit more about your situation? And we decided to work it into a word cloud. So this is that example of a data visualization practice. But the bigger the word, the more that it was used by all the different people. And this was published for that group of people so that there we could show that they were really listening to everyone. That was the main story that they wanted to tell. Yeah. So okay, looking at the more technical aspect of it, the tools that were used here were, of course, Python. Best programming language, fight me. And some of the things, Pandas is definitely essential, Matplotlib and Seaborn. So I just wanted to share these tools so that you guys could maybe look into it a little bit more. But these are like your go-to tools for data visualization. Yeah. And yeah, so far, does anyone have any questions about data viz, the data process, and everything in general? Yeah, feel free to just send in the chat, or give a thumbs up if you're okay so far. All right. Okay. Okay. So at this point, I actually want you guys to maybe apply everything that we've talked about so far into kind of starting your own mini project. So just a summary of the data process so far, right? So it's asking questions, what problem you want to address, and then trying to answer those questions through different means. Maybe if you know a little bit of Python, um, you could like wrangle the data a little bit, or just looking at other articles that have tried to answer this question, right? And then exploring the data that you have, going a bit deeper, and what does it actually tell, and then discussing how you can really put your point across. So we won't be doing any coding or actually building it just yet, but I want you guys to do the first part, which is asking questions. So I'll send you a link to one of my favorite data sets, which is the Pokemon dataset. Be sending it in the chat right now. So if there are any Digimon lovers here, bye. No, but yes, this is the Pokemon dataset. Don't worry about like maybe downloading it or like having to do anything. I just really want you to look at it. There's some basic visualizations here that you could maybe compare to, but I'll give you guys around 10 minutes to actually form your own questions. Like what problems or what do you want to find out about this data set? And if you don't know anything about Pokemon, just look at these values and see what questions come to mind. So don't worry too much about being too deep or too correct, but I just want to see how you guys form questions. Yeah. So 10 minutes, we'll stop at around 8:40. And yeah, just feel free to go to that link and ask me any questions if you guys have any thoughts or you're lost. Right. So to clarify, by around 8:40, I want you guys to send questions in the chat. If you're shy, you can just send it to me also, and then I'll be sharing my thoughts as well. Very valid question. I love that. Okay, we have a few more questions about generations and the number of legendary Pokemon. Mhm. Actually, that is interesting. I don't know that. And which Pokemon type has the strongest attack stat? Ooh, yeah. So you can already see a lot from these. These are just basic graphs, and you can filter through them using the site itself. So you can sort them, choose a different type if you have a favorite one. So mine, it's not obvious, but my favorite Pokemon is Bulbasaur. Maybe I want to see Bulbasaur's stats and his type. Someone also pointed out that the different stats for the Pokemon have like similar distributions, which is also very interesting. Right. So 6 minutes left. we have 1 minute left. If anyone else has any questions that they came up with that they'd like to share, please send it in the chat now. Okay, so it's 8:40. So I'd like to discuss the questions that you guys shared. And again, if you have any last minute ones, just send them. Yeah. Okay. So the Pokemon from recent regions, are they more powerful than the older ones? That's something that'd be fun to explore. And curious about the number of legendary Pokemon per Pokemon type. It's also interesting. So we can see if like it's balanced between generations. And then a question that I came up with, if like let's say I'm new to Pokemon and looking at this data set, like why are there null values for the other type? That could be another question you can ask. But yeah. So with this, like with the questions that you guys shared, it's really you diving into the first step. So it's really simple, right? Like just legit asking questions about the data or the context even. But that's honestly the most essential part of this whole process, because you can make the most beautiful data visualization, right? Like you can make these types of websites that they're so pretty to look at, and they're like really fun to go through. But if your goal or if the question that you're answering is really, if it's lost or if it's like not that defined, you know, it's pretty much gonna go to waste, because it's always gonna go back to the problem. Like by doing this type of stuff, by spending time and effort on it, are you really addressing what you're trying to do? Are you really answering the question that you ask? Are you sharing it to the people, and are they getting something from it? Yeah. So again, that's the first step, and you guys have already gone through it. And you know, just to show a little glimpse of what you can do with that, with those questions. So asking, so Jake asked which Pokemon type has the strongest attack stat, right? I'd like to share my own kind of similar question. So I was asking which Pokemon type is the best. So this is like a more detailed version of it, and this was actually for a class. But basically, you could do stuff like creating a simple score tracker. So this is just like making a score for each type and then adding them all up to maybe see which Pokemon type is the best. And we actually found out that Paras, or the grass bug typing, was one of the best combinations in the game, which is really weird, right? You wouldn't expect something like a grass bug or Parasect to have the best typing. So that's like trying to answer the questions. This is just a little glimpse of it. We won't go through the technical aspect again. But from there, it's about asking again why those are the answers. So why Paras was the best typing, and it found out that the way we scored it was more about effectiveness. So grass bug typings have the most effectiveness, so to speak, compared to the different typings. So other typings that had a high score from this algorithm that we made was Ice Rock and Grass Ice, which is, if you play Pokemon, you know that's not the best kinds of typings. And this is us trying to visualize it. That basically the ones with the highest scores were actually those typings. So this is us trying to visualize it. It's not the best, but it's just a short kind of attempt at it. But the biggest thing is that we found the story about it. We found that Paras is technically the best based on our algorithm, but it showed a bigger story within the Pokemon game where it's about not just looking at one aspect of a typing, because we were looking at effectiveness, right? But if you look at different types, they have strengths and weaknesses, not just in one aspect. So maybe buggrass was better in terms of effectiveness, but in terms of stats, we all know that maybe steel types are better. Maybe fire is the one with the strongest attack stat. That's why it cancels out the grass bug technically being the most effective, right? So it unearthed this like bigger narrative of the Pokemon game being unbelievably balanced in a lot of ways that we didn't see because we were very focused on one aspect or one part of the entire game. So those are the types of stories that you really want to uncover and you want to share with people, because by asking questions, attempting to solve them, and then just sharing it with people, sometimes they don't even need to be visualized in some way. It could be like one picture of a Pokemon, right? That um, essentially the answer was this picture. And for the people here who like invested in Pokemon, they'd be like, "What?" It already gives that semblance of an impact. So that's really our goal. So you don't have to be super advanced, or you don't have to like create something super big like these projects, but the impact that they have can be achieved in similar and simple ways that you can explore on your own. Yeah. So that's our journey so far. We discussed a little bit more about data visualization, its definition and meaning, what traditionally it is, and then how we can elevate it or what we can do with it. And then I shared to you a little bit about my process of the data visualization project and taking things step by step. And then you guys were able to take your first step into it, just to get a little feel of how to start a project. And then how can you really deliver that value through the stories? And sometimes it's not just numbers. So stories, not numbers. Yeah. So from here, where do we go? You found that story, and then sometimes there are roadblocks along the way. You're not exactly sure how to go about it in um, a technical method, or so to speak. And I really like this quote by Scott Belsky. And when the next step isn't clear, the best way to figure out is to just take action. Constant motion is the key to execution. So just keep on asking questions. There are a lot of resources out there. There are a lot of people that are really into data science, data visualization that you can just ask. And the data science and data viz community in the Philippines is something that's really, really growing right now. So just go on LinkedIn, go on Twitter. There's a lot of people that you can talk to. There are a bunch of resources from Data Camp to Kaggle where you can learn more about the technical aspect and how to code. But it's really just taking things step by step and just Googling your way towards a solution and towards impact. And with that, I'd like to share to you a little gift from me. So if you type this bit.ly link, stories not numbers, FT, it should lead you to this Notion page where the recording will be added here. The slides that I just used are here also. The different resources that I quoted and cited are all here if you want to explore on it a little bit more. The Pokemon dataset, of course, other datasets that you might be interested in, the simple PowerPoint if you kind of want to see more about it, it's also included there. But this hopefully has resources that will help you guys take the next step as well, from maybe going into different technical courses as well to the different basics and exercises. But yeah, if you guys ever need more help or want to discuss anything, just reach out to me whenever. And thank you so much.
Yay, thank you so much for that really insightful talk, Franz. Now we shall proceed to the Q&A. Again, if you guys have questions, please drop them in the Slido, or you can just say them in the Zoom chat. Yes, you can also unmute, have a conversation with Franz himself. So first question, do you have a favorite project that you worked on? And if you do, can you tell us about it? And why was your favorite?
Ooh, for data science or data viz?
Um, I guess you can tell us about both.
Okay, because actually, my favorite one for data viz is really the word cloud. Wait, give me 1 second. Because this was something that I was really just starting to get into, right? And I was given this data set and I was working for them. And it was about therapy for children with disabilities. And I get this really massive data set with a bunch of parents, like hundreds of families talking about their experience. And I was like, how can I best summarize this to really share that story? And I was researching on different ways to do that. You know, a lot of people just do converting it into numbers or like not even looking at the stories and just like focusing on the other stuff like finance data, all of that. But then I found out about this tool called word clouds. And this was something I really just found out about. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna try it. And then I found out that you could like make it into a specific image. So I found this picture of a family, and when I shared it to like the people I worked with, they were really interested, like, oh wow, we never thought of actually doing it that way. So, and you know, after that, when this was released, I found out that a lot of people were touched by it, even though it was something like more of a first try. So that's why I really really love this particular word cloud in particular. And another one of my favorite ones is, I'm not sure if I can find it, but it was a it was a project on mental health where I tried to apply machine learning to mental health, by tracking like Twitter activity of people that had symptoms or that people that were open about having a mental illness. And it aimed to help people like not self-diagnose but more on see if you're at risk of a mental health disorder just by looking at your activity on Twitter. So it was really about the about raising awareness that technology can be an indicator, so to speak, and how something like data science and machine learning can help mental health professionals, you know, um, discuss this topic more. So trying to like break the taboo that surrounds mental health through data science, machine learning. Yeah.
Thank you so much. My next question, how challenging could the data collecting process be, especially for untapped topics?
Ooh, okay. It depends. But going back to that mental health project, right? There are a bunch of papers on it, but you know that issue that a lot of the time the data that you see is for like different countries or doesn't fully apply to your context. So when we were trying to work on a mental health project, it's not like you could ask hospitals for that data, right? So what we did was we actually created our own survey. We had to use like a tool so that we can collect the Twitter data ourselves, like through this thing called scraping. But the challenge there is really just getting used to the tools, but a lot of it is really, really possible. So it depends on the context. For example, the Twitter data, um, there's an API for it. Facebook also has an API for it. If it's something that's really big, it's it's still technically possible. Like I showed you guys the common voice, so they didn't have that data. But what they did was they built a platform, an entire website for them to actually collect it. So it could be as simple as making your own survey if it's like unconventional topics. But most of the time, there will be data out there for you. You have UNICEF, you have PSA even, and I shared to you this resource hub called Data Hub that I also worked on last year, where it summarizes a lot of the data like open source from Facebook, from um, different institutions and organizations, so that you could see a lot of it. And we're also working with coalitions such as the Youth for Mental Health Coalition and Move for One Coalition to, you know, share the data about mental health, transportation, all of that stuff. But yeah.
Thank you. And also related to this question, how can the most vulnerable be represented by data if they themselves lack data? The asker said kasi na they had projects before where they looked at indigenous people and data, pero that data was limited or outdated. How would you tackle that kind of problem?
Ooh, I love that actually. That question is so important, especially now. Like we have the voting thing, the elections. So that's also one thing about data collection that you should explore, where you have to respect the boundaries of the data, knowing the limitations of your data, and knowing what data you really need. So as you said, maybe there's outdated data on indigenous people, right? But then you have to ask yourself, where's that data coming from? Can I collect that data on my own? How much time will it take? And if I can't, what other data can I use as reference? Because there will be data that you can use, but that's true that you really have to take into consideration the ethics side of it. And sometimes you really do have to collect the data on your own. So for indigenous people, I know that there are communities even in UP Diliman already that you can talk to, and from there you can start with simple interviews and talking to them to get like initial data points or uh, an initial start for where to get that data. But yeah, for those types of representations you just have to be careful, and there will be organizations and other communities that you can talk to about it.
Thank you so much for that. So, personal question for me actually. You're currently doing a lot, like aside from working for startups, you're also currently CEO of DSC. So I'd like to know how you apply your data science skills to all those endeavors, especially for me as a designer. It's so hard to like understand the application for me. So I'd love to see how you do it concretely.
Ooh, okay. You mentioned you're a designer, and partly the reason why I went into data science was because I fell in love with the design process. Like, diba, you get to talk to users and you get to see what their needs are, and then you're gonna build a solution for them through that. But I am not a design person. I cannot like really make like wireframes or branding and all of that. I'm more of like really a technical person. So I started out as a software engineer, and with data science, you can apply it by asking similar questions. Like, again, asking questions. What are the problems I'm trying to solve? So, in terms of an org, right, you're helping the other people grow. So, what fields are they interested in? What are their goals that they want to achieve? And how can we keep track of it for them? So, it can be as simple as how many workshops they've attended, or for event management it could be like how many attendees were there, the feedback also, like, oh, how would you rate this talk, stuff like that. So it's like that data that doesn't really get utilized, especially with student organizations sometimes. So that's where the data science comes in, that like, oh, okay, we could apply it by making it into a visualization showing the diversity, like, oh, 40% of the attendees were actually women, right? So simple stuff like that is already applying data science and data visualization into creating a small impact. And for startups, it's all about the impact you have as an or as a business. That, like, are you really addressing your customers' needs, or are they really being able to engage with your product? So yeah, again, going back to that flow, that is all about asking questions and then how you can try and solve it, or how you can try and answer it.
Thank you. That was super comprehensive. We have another question in the slide though. Any tips that you want to share about explore the data exploration process? Because it seems like the hardest part of them all.
Ooh, yes, that is true. It definitely is the hardest because it's the most technical side, but I suggest to just keep practicing it. That start with something like the Pokemon dataset, those chill kinds of dataset keep asking questions, because the more you ask questions, the more you want to try and answer them. And when you ask a question, there's not just one way to answer it, right? So that's where finding how other people answer those questions are the most important, because you get to see what methods they actually use. So there's a lot of those types of stuff in Medium, in Twitter, or different case studies. I included a link to Thinking Machines because they have case studies for that. So with exploration, there'll be a flow that you get used to once you keep doing it. So for me, it's about looking at how big the data is, looking at what the columns are, and then which ones are the most important, and then maybe applying a little bit of statistics from there, like, okay, what's the mean, what's the median, just to get a little glimpse of what it can tell you. And then from there, you can try graph it out to see other patterns that you don't see yet. So yeah, really just read up and practice on different data sets, because there's no one clear process, and you'll find your own as you go along.
Thank you so much for all those tips. And I guess that wraps up our data viz talk for today. Thank you so much, Franz, for giving your time and effort to educate us about such an interesting topic. And for everyone here right now, you can connect with Franz's LinkedIn. I dropped the link in the chat, and also check out his portfolio. And if ever you are going to work on your own data viz project, I'm sure he'd be happy to help. Just reach out to him on those platforms. Again, thank you so much. I hope you all have a lovely evening for today, and keep exploring interesting questions like in Data Viz.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good
So much.
night. And related to this, guys, this Saturday at 8 p.m., we'll have another talk related to data called The Power in Softness, an exploration of how data analysis can enrich our relationship with ourselves and tell our own stories. So if you guys haven't signed up for that, please do. Very related to this.
See you all around.